just to start things off, obviously the season didn't start the way you wanted to, missing the first three. I know it was tough situations, but how did you kind of deal with that? Coach called you the Iceman during camp and said you hadn't really missed. So when you missed the first three, how'd you kind of deal with that and keep your head up?
Yeah, it was definitely a disappointing way to start, but I just kept it in my mind that I was still young and I still had a lot of room to grow. So I try not to get too down on myself, and I just tried to tell myself every week's a new week and just you got to get better this week.
Cole, what was the reaction on Saturday night after you came? Just your family, your friends, what was your phone looking like?
Blown up. Well, somebody actually got my mom's reaction on tape and posted it to Twitter. I saw it was pretty cool, but my family was ended up on the field with most of the fans. It was really awesome. We had family friends. My girlfriend was here. Her cousins were here, so I had a bunch of people here, and it was just a really awesome environment to see everybody celebrating with me.
Colt, what's it like when they call timeout and you kick it? Does that give you confidence? Does it make you really does it change your mindset at all?
Yes and no. I mean, it always makes you think about the kick a little bit more than you should, but I actually kind of like it because I get to take a couple practice swings and I sort of get to take a deep breath and calm myself down and say, okay, this is the one. Calm down, don't get in your head, and just kick the ball.
What do you feel like your range is? We saw the Oregon State guy hit a 60-yarder with room to spare. What do you feel like your range is?
Yeah, range hasn't been my main focus here. It's definitely been dialed in on trying to get my accuracy back to where it needs to be. But currently I would probably say anywhere 55 and in, I'm pretty solid on kicking. Inside 60 I can hit, but it's not as consistent as I'd want it to be right now.
Cole, I'm sure you came here with certain expectations. Has there been any aspect of this, being a true freshman place kicker at this level, that surprised you or has been eye-opening?
Surprising, not really. I mean, I feel like I sort of had a handle of what to expect. A lot of my trainers, a lot of my coaches all had experience at the college and some even the pro level, so I've had a lot of great mentors that have let me know what to expect and how to go about sort of entering into an upper level.
Had you ever kicked a game winner before?
I did, actually. My first year kicking was my freshman year of high school, and I think it was our third football game. I ended up kicking a 25-yard game winner. It was pretty cool.
How does this one compare? Obviously, it's a bigger stage, and
Oh, yeah.
This team really needed a victory. So how did that compare to that one in high school?
Yeah, it wasn't even really close. I mean, being my freshman year, I'm from Northern California. Football isn't the biggest deal there, and freshman football team, we probably had maybe 300 or 400 people, which was it was cool. But compared to almost 50,000 or something like that the other night, it was just an incredible feeling.
Did you, through the season now, have you noticed a difference between sea level and here at home?
Definitely. And I didn't think I would because I came from closer to sea level to the higher altitude, and I was like, oh, it won't affect me that much. And I got here and I didn't really feel the effect, but I've definitely felt the effect going from kicking here to kicking in a game at, say, Oregon or Cal.
Does it change your approach?
It doesn't change my approach. Maybe a little bit on kickoffs, just trying to hit a little bit less hang time, drive the ball more. But the more I try and change due to condition, the more inaccurate I become. So I just try and stay out of my head with that stuff and just hit my ball.
Brian mentioned the Iceman nickname. What was your reaction to that? And are you okay with people calling you that?
Absolutely. I think it's pretty funny. I definitely don't think I lived up to it at the first part of the season, but I think I'll get there at some point. So it's
Is that your first nickname as a football player?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I used to play soccer, and I used to be called Charlie Brown because I had a big head, and I got a lot of header goals. But that's my first football name.
Cole, how pleased are you with your kickoffs? I mean, obviously the other day you put them all, I think 4 of them through the end zone, all were touchbacks. But overall this season, how do you feel like that's gone?
I think I've progressed well this season with them. I mean, obviously the altitude up here helps, and I haven't hit as many when we go to away games at the lower sea level, but I feel like my technique is where I want it to be, and as I keep progressing with Coach Turley and this program, I feel like I'll get stronger and bigger and be able to hit more consistent touchbacks.
I remember when you were a recruit, you mentioned you had a buddy that went to UConn. It was an early enrollee there, and one of the pieces of advice he gave you was to not overdo it, that you're going to want to kick all the time. How have you kind of balanced that out here? Is it tough to sometimes balance wanting to kick and practice and get better, but also not wear your leg out?
I mean, definitely. Like in practice, it's always natural to want to like kick and get better and hit every rep and just keep progressing. But it's not the best for your health. So like when I was in high school, I used to kick 5-6 times a week, and it broke down my body. But when I got here, I started to limit my reps and limit my days, and I could see a substantial growth in the health of my body and my stamina, which was good.
Let's just take a quick on the Zoom. Troy, I know you're on now. Is there anyone needing a question? Okay, no questions on Zoom. Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Josh Watts now. Questions for Josh?
Josh, we've seen you, get so much better from last year. How much better does it feel for you, just the way you're punting as you're now kind of settled into American football?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, everyone sort of says it's been a huge difference, but, I just don't really think about it. I just really just think about doing my job, don't really think too much about the techniques, anything like that. Don't think about last year. Sort of just one punt at a time. I don't really feel like I'm a much better punter this year than last year. I think it's happened more in games this year. And I've been able to showcase what I can sort of do more in games, whereas last year, we also played in tougher conditions last year, so that factors in. But, I don't really think about those things. I just think about doing my job, think about, just hitting it as high and far as I can. It's obviously worked out pretty well. I feel like that's a good mindset for me to have, because when I overthink it, and sometimes I did last year, that's when you can really sort of get in your own head, and then that's when the bad results can happen. But that's advice that I've taken from guys like Tom Hackett, who played at Utah, won 2 Ray Guy Awards, Mitch Wisnowski, Michael Dixon, guys like that who really just kick the shit out of the ball, and just trust it. And that's sort of what I've tried to do this year.
Josh, you have a slight lead over Arizona's punter in the Pac-12 in terms of punting average. Is that a goal that you set forth? Is something that you look at week to week just to try to strive for being the best in the conference?
No, not at all. Not at all. I just focus on my job, try to limit returns. It's tough with the scheme we run. We run a real sort of pro-style, NFL-style pro punt system. But just do my best to try and sort of flip the field. If that's the results that come from it, I'll take it, but I'm sort of more focused on the process rather than the results.
You mentioned the pro-style
Yeah.
aspect. You were actually initially recruited to be a rugby style under Mel Tucker, right? What was your reaction when you found out you were going to be doing a different style maybe than you anticipated when this new staff took over?
It's a difficult one because at the time I wasn't sure how I would fit into a pro punt scheme, and even at times this year, I've hit some great balls that have been returned, and the way I sort of look at it, it's hard to compare my numbers against teams that do a rugby style pro punt, so not a pro punt but a rugby style rollout punt, because when the ball snapped, they might get 4 or 5 guys down the field when with us, we only get 2 guys. Everyone else is protecting until the ball's kicked. So I just focus on, that, and, when I compare numbers and things like that, I'll do it against teams that run a pro style or NFL teams. And, I think it stacks up fairly well against both of those things.
So to that point, you've had a lot of punts returned.
Yeah.
Probably more so than others. I haven't looked at the total percentages, but I know it seems like a lot. And you hit a good one towards the end of regulation the other night, and it was a 26-yard return.
Yeah.
You mentioned trying to limit that. How do you try to limit that? And is that kind of the next step for you?
Well, that wasn't a great punt. It's difficult because I think hang time-wise, I'm probably the best, or if not second best in the conference, right? So that's just, and it's difficult because I looked at guys like, Braden Mann, who won the Ray Guy in 2018, averaged 50 yards, also had similar return yards to what I'm having this year off a similar amount of punts. So for me, it's tough. Sometimes I get frustrated because I'll hit a great ball with good hang time, good distance, good location, and the other team might just have beaten us at the gunner position, and we can't get guys down there. So, whereas teams, with no disrespect to Oregon State's punter, their best hang time hasn't really been over 4.1 or 4.2 seconds, so 4.1, 4.2 seconds. Whereas I'm sort of consistently above those numbers, and they've had 0 return yards. So you can't really look at that as a measure, and sometimes I get frustrated as well because, I feel like, well, sometimes I let the team down, but, sometimes it's just a great punt. And Thomas Morstead, I remember, 15-year guy in the NFL, he sort of speaks about, sometimes your best balls will get returned, and then in a pro punt scheme, and then sometimes your worst balls, your shanks, you get 20 yards on the roll and you get a 60 net. So, I try to focus on that. And overall, I think our net's still pretty good. I think we're still top 15, top 20 in the country. I'd like it to be a little bit higher, but for a pro punt scheme, it's pretty good. Pretty good effort.
As a quick follow-up to that, were you frustrated after that one?
Oh, for sure. And, 25 seconds left. Different scenarios we could have gone with. Could have kicked it out of bounds. We could have, kicked a short high ball. Things that now we sort of know, and we've discussed that in the meeting today with the coach. Now we know moving forward we're in that situation, right? We might have to punt it out of bounds or kick it 35 yards up in the air, make sure they can't return it.
Pro Kick Australia has produced so many different guys that have had success in the States, punting and kicking. Is that kind of like a fraternity? How many of those guys have you come across in your time?
It feels like we've played an Australian every time we've played this year, and a guy from Pro Kick. So, we've got a group chat. We speak all the time. It's great to have those guys over here, and we've got guys at all levels from, I think it's FCS, the Division 2, from whatever, all the way up. We got 5 guys, 6 guys in the NFL. So we have that constant sort of communication, and it's awesome to see a lot of guys doing well and really progressing.
What's it been like for you this season where in the first half of the season you were a vital weapon and you knew coming in that it was you that was helping the team? So you go from that to hardly getting any the other day. How has that progression been for you?
It's fantastic. To see the team perform, that offense is really starting to click, and that's going to bloom from now on, I really believe. You're going to see massive strides in the next last 3 games of the year. Hopefully we got a bowl game at the end of that. It's fantastic. I can sit on the sidelines a bit more and watch Brendan, do what he does. For me, that excites me. Less punts, less work on the leg. I can really sort of focus on the punts that I do have.
You came here with planning on being here 2 years, and
Yep.
you've now been here 2 seasons, but because of COVID, you can have another one. Have you decided what your plans are after this season?
Sorry, for next season?
Yeah, do you plan, you could come back next year. Is that something you think you'll do?
Still firmly believe that. I think I still need another season here to really, cement. And, my goal is to be the #1 punter coming out next year. And that's what I'm really sort of aiming to do. And I think I can achieve that here. So I think I still need some work in some areas, but, 1 more year will really help.
Anything on the Zoom for Josh?
Yeah, I've got one. Josh, you obviously were a rugby kicker. How hard was the transition for you to go from the rugby style lower hang time to making punts with 4.5 times for hang time?
It took some time. Fortunately, I think I've sort of mentioned this before, I had Tom Ruin who really guided me through that process. He worked with a guy down at Alabama called J.K. Scott, who was, I think, a 2 or 3 time All-American, first team All-American, Ray Guy Award winner. So that really sort of helped, and I sort of progressed pretty quickly. But last year I was sort of like a true freshman, right? I never played before, and there's not a lot of true freshman kickers and punters that are ready to come in and perform at a high level. It takes 5 or 6 games, and you're seeing it with Carl really sort of bloom now. So I think it took time, but it just took me to really sort of feel comfortable, playing college football.
Justin,
you.
I think you got a question, Justin.
Josh, a couple people have touched on it already, but just as this season started and the offense wasn't really clicking and you were seeing a lot of action out there, punting 6, 7, 8 times. Now there's only a couple games left in the season. Your workload has definitely decreased. I'm just curious, broadly speaking, just how are you feeling? How's the leg and just overall health-wise, how's your body feeling right now?
It's pretty banged up for sure. I think a couple of games there, Cal, I felt I punted well against Cal. I didn't punt well against Oregon, but I was probably hitting it about 50, 60%. So I just work with Coach Turley and we sort of manage it throughout the week, pre-game, to try and really get up and hit as best as I can on the weekend. And we feel like, if I'm at 60, 70%, that's still pretty good for us. So, it's actually feeling better now than it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think the load's definitely helped being taken off.
Anything else from the Zoom? All right. Thanks, Josh.
Cool. Thank you.